Okay, I got my new motherboard for my wife's laptop. See my previous video on how to remove the old one. This is the old motherboard here, which I'm still going to be using the heatsink off of, and the CPU, and both the CPU and part of the heatsink need to be cleaned. The old thermal paste or compound that was on needs to be cleaned off here because we're going to reuse this, and then it needs to be cleaned off the CPU. I haven't detached the CPU yet also. That's just done by rotating this one screw here. So first we're going to try to clean off the old and then put on new compound, which I got at Radio Shack. So I'm going to try using alcohol to remove it. Okay, it looks like this is on pretty thick on this heatsink, and it just comes off with using a flat edge screwdriver here. You want to get as shiny as possible. Okay, I think that looks clean. Let's take the CPU off, and that's just by rotating this screw. There, it's off. And we clean it. You want it to have a mirror finish on it. Put the CPU on the new motherboard. This is the old motherboard. So let's get it out of the way. Here's the new one, which I got off of eBay. A reasonable price. Which will go like this once we're ready to do that. And speaking of the heatsink, this little chip here, North Bridge they call it, I think it's a graphics chip, but anyway, I'm going to use, you have to have a thermal pad on top of it also, because this doesn't actually touch it. There's a gap. So this one on the old is still sticky and looks in good shape, so I'm going to use it again. Okay, so let's put the CPU on. There's a little triangle on where you put this on. And there's a little triangle on the back of the CPU. And you want to line those up. And that triangle's up here and triangle's there, so it should go like that. Turn the screw back. (180°), and it's locked in. Okay, now we're ready to put this on, but first we want to put our I'm going to put this thermal compound on the CPU. See if that's enough. Okay, last step here before we put the motherboard in is make sure we hook up the fan. Like that. I'm ready to put it in the computer. Flip it over like that. Make sure all your cables are back. There's 3 here, 1 here, and 2 here. Okay, this copper edge is going to go under this clip right here. So that's the first thing you want to do. Put it under there, and then all these connectors on the side slide into slots, kind of maneuver it. You're going to make sure all your cables are back out of the way. Drop it down in like that. Attach this big white cable. It goes, actually though, you probably should lift this up before you put it down. Put this big white cable on, or connector on first. Attach to the bottom of the end of the motherboard here, like that. Then this black connector goes on top, so we can push back down if we want. That, and then the USB, and it slides in and just sits there, and then you flip this little white hinge thing down over top of it. Okay, now install this one over here. Goes down on top. And you got your microphone and the other cable. This slides underneath, goes in horizontally. That. There's a little groove here for put the wire down in. Make sure this wire doesn't cover any screw holes. And then last, install this one. It's got a sticker label on top of it, so it makes it a little tricky to see what you're doing. We'll check under that sticker to make sure it's seated well. And I think it is. Okay, we're ready to put the screws in now. First one goes in here up by the fan. And one here on the corner. These screw holes have an MB by them, which stands for motherboard, obviously. It's kind of handy. Okay. Okay, we're going to connect these touchpad buses next. Put these little white tabs back first if they've closed, which they have on mine. And then the speaker cable. And then this bus here. A little white hinged clip. And we have a screw here. This actually tells you the size, I just noticed. It's a 2.5 by 5. Now we're ready to put on the keyboard. This has little tabs on the edge. Here's the keyboard. Okay, so next, place the bezel on. It has clips on both sides. And now turn it over. Okay, we put it in the hard drive now. Connect the cable. Now we're going to connect the wireless board. One screw that goes in, hold it down. It's a little silver screw. It's really short also. and hook up the antennas. The gray wire goes on the side closest to the battery compartment. There's tiny pins on it, so again, small hands would help here. Okay, let's put the RAM in. Okay, let's put the battery in. Need to tighten down the hard drive. Just put a couple in for right now. I want to test this thing to make sure it's working before I totally put all the screws back in. Put this bezel down a little better. Screen is coming on now at least. It's a good sign. I'm waiting for Windows to boot up. It's doing more than it did before, so I think we've got it fixed. Be patient here. It says it's getting devices ready now. Hopefully all the devices are back in properly. Not sure what it's doing exactly. Now it just says it's getting ready. We're beyond the caps lock flashing and we're actually in display, so I think the motherboard's going to work. It's just got to boot everything up now. I've got to finish putting the screws in the bottom and the cover plates on. Okay, it's working on updates, of course. Windows 10 has updates about every day or two. And now it's doing the following. Let's turn it on and I'll show you. Push the power button. You hear the fan coming on. I think there's only one fan in this unit. Some have said that's the problem. It doesn't have the best ventilation. We'll look at that more later maybe. But in turning it on, there's nothing on the screen showing up. You'll note, if you look closely, the cap lock, there's a white flashing button on it. It's flashing about every 2 to 3 seconds consistently. What I've read on the internet, watched a lot of YouTube videos, talked to a tech, this is indicating probably a motherboard failure. Okay, the computer booted up, added the devices, and it's working. So we're ready to put the rest of the screws on. A lot of screws to install. One thing I'll note that on the back, I'm gonna do the battery compartment first, and there's 4 screws on this side and 3 on this side, and there's actually labels above the screw holes, also telling you their keyboard with a little keyboard symbol, but like it'll say M 2.5 times 5, and then the manual that I posted in the video and in the description, it calls these numbers out. So and from what I can tell, the larger ones, which are also the ones that go on the rest of the base, are the 2.5 by 5s or something, maybe 2.5 by 6, but they have a little, it's a brown or purplish color on them. So note that if you might see that on your screws. It's one way of telling them apart, keeping them apart. Whereas the smaller ones in the battery compartment here, they're 2.5 times 3, and they have a little blue color on the threads. So that might be helpful in trying to keep these screws separated, because there's a ton of them. We're putting 7 here and then 9 in the rest. So let's go ahead and finish up the screws here. I'm going to do the battery compartment first. Okay, now let's put the RAM and the WLAN thing on. It's got a lip on it here, which is going to have to go under the batteries. So let's put it on next. And these screws are already attached, so you don't have to worry about figuring out which screws these are. Then let's put the hard drive on next. You want to, when you put the hard drive in, you want to just put in this screw, and this screw, because this screw is part of it's attached to this cover. And these have little symbols on them telling you which is which. Let's put the battery in now. Okay, then the 9 remaining screws. YouTubers. I think we got them all in. So I have a link on this to how to remove all this, and the motherboard is working, and it was a success. It cost about $130, and I had to buy this tube of compound, which was $12. So this is almost a $500 laptop originally, and spend $140 or so is probably, I think, worth it, because we should get another maybe 2 to 3 years of life out of it. So that's all for now, YouTubers. Old John signing off.